Hello and welcome to episode 92 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. I had to miss episode 92 last week. I'm recording it this week. I'll talk about that in the next segment because there's a lot that went on that I just need to vent, but more on that later. Let's get to the NASCAR news first. We just have a couple of brief stories. And as I predicted, there is more drama surrounding the 2024 Chicago Street Race. Now, in articles from Crane Chicago Business and Sports Business Journal, it's come to pass that the deal for the race between NASCAR and Chicago was still being negotiated. And to quote the JC article, which summarizes the situation very succinctly, quote, NASCAR and the city of Chicago have not, quote-unquote, signed an agreement yet on the Chicago Street Race, despite Mayor Brandon Johnson announcing last week a new and improved deal. City officials said that the city would have, quote, gone public once it finalized negotiations, but NASCAR, quote, wanted to announce its racing schedule. The city officials said, we would have been happy to not have an announcement and continue working on the agreement there. The announcement was solely based on needing to put something out there in the context of the overall schedule for 2024. The officials said that the Johnson administration is, quote, still working towards a final agreement, but has commitments from NASCAR to, quote, reimburse the city for costs at future races. Now, reading between the lines here, the wording that the unnamed Chicago official used tells me a lot. Even though there is a deal in theory, the fact that neither side has really signed it yet is very telling. Like it or not, there are a lot of issues that still exist. There's still a chance, albeit a remote one, that this deal could fall through. And remember, a not insignificant detail here is that many citizens of Chicago, especially those who live and work in the downtown area, do not want this race to return for 2024 and beyond. I talked about the monetary numbers prior to this. Those numbers don't lie. But will they be enough to bring the race back even with NASCAR refunding the city? That's the $64,000 question. And to be honest with you, I honestly don't know. See, we're in the midst of an election cycle, and there's a lot of people who are worried about their jobs over the ambitions of Chicago and NASCAR, because if the citizens aren't happy, the aldermen aren't getting voted back in. So we're going to have to see how this plays out, but I wouldn't hold out hope if I were you. Now we get to the issue that happened at Las Vegas last weekend, and I wasn't even going to talk about this, but the way it played out, I just have to talk about it now. So after the Cup Series race at Las Vegas, Ryan Blaney, who had finished 6th, failed an inspection because the left front shock didn't meet the overall specified length. In looking over their templates and computer systems, NASCAR discovered an issue with the template that was used for inspection, and as such realized that the failure wasn't a real failure. Now, this was NASCAR's issue and not Team Penske or Blaney's issue, so his sixth place finish was restored, and NASCAR fully admitted that it was on them. You hate to see something like this happen, but I like the fact that NASCAR is becoming more consistent with rule enforcement, and they won't throw a driver under the bus to protect themselves. I'm happy for Ryan Blaney, and I'm happy that this worked out well for all. And I'm just going to talk about this briefly, this next story, because, well, you'll see. We go back to the NASCAR media rights deal for our final NASCAR story this week, and the news is that as of right now, the deal is still being negotiated. There seems to be a number of issues that are still being worked out. What's appearing to happen is NASCAR and Fox are more likely to, NBC and Fox are more likely to resign. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. But there is a 6-race deal mid-season package that's still up in the air. Now, I bring this up because there are 2 very specific companies that are interested. Both Amazon and Turner are reported to be interested in this mid-season package deal. As much as I hate to say this, I don't mind Amazon as much. but I'll be damned if I'll ever throw my support behind Turner. NASCAR has tried Turner before, and every single time it doesn't go well. Turner's strategy for NASCAR is literally this simple: advertising over racing. Throw in as many commercial breaks as you can, sell as many commercials as you can. It doesn't win over fans, it doesn't win over teams, it doesn't win over drivers. It even really doesn't win over sponsors. But I'm really wondering if this does work, how it could possibly work. And frankly, when it comes to the big two, NBC and Fox, Fox needs NASCAR and NASCAR needs Fox. They're both good in terms of rating draws. Yet you look at the numbers before and after, Fox and NBC, before and after, Fox is consistently better in terms of ratings than NBC. It's not up for debate. NBC just isn't working. Their elimination of NBC Sports Network in favor of Peacock is not going well. Peacock is still on track to lose $3 billion this year. That's not good. The fact is, NASCAR needs to move on from NBC. I don't think anybody's arguing that. I mean, even the deal with the CW, I can say is good because it's a network that everyone has access to that won't charge for streaming. Put it on there. You ever see what's on the CW on Sunday afternoon? I don't. I've never, in the 41 years I've been alive, I've never been so bored for entertainment on a Sunday afternoon. I thought, I'm going to watch the CW. The hell with watching grass grow. Paint drying? Screw that. I don't like where this is going, but there really doesn't seem to be any other major options for NASCAR at this point. Especially because the second half of the season, you're facing more competition with the NFL, the NBA, the MLB postseason, the NHL, and college football. I'll be interested to see where this goes, but I'm not holding out hope. And with that, I'm going to take my first break, and I'll discuss why I missed last week's episode. Get your popcorn. So, welcome back. Last week was a nightmare. I had computer issues, I had personal issues, I couldn't record last week. I just didn't have it in me. So I need to vent, and we're going to start with the computer issues. Now I have a question. Is it really that difficult for Windows to come out with an update that can actually install properly? Every month I update Windows 10, but with this particular update, the update repeatedly failed. Not only did it fail multiple times, but to add more aggravation, Windows would then have to spend at least 30 minutes, if not more, reverting to the old version, only to have the update fail once again. I was eventually able to successfully update, and in doing a little research, I found that this update actually had a lot of issues, causing a lot of problems for people, and I wasn't the only one who was afflicted, which was some comfort. Now let's talk about some of the drama I heard and had to deal with at work. I have advice for all high school students as well as the youth of today. The world does not have to change to make you happy. The system will not change for your benefit. Nobody has to move out of your way. And finally, wherever you work, no matter what industry you're in, the company's needs will always take priority over your needs and your ambitions, and I had to deal with this shit again. So while in the break room, I overheard a 16-year-old new hire who has literally been on the job less than a month complaining that they were hired as an entry-level position as opposed to a higher level, which they felt they should have been. And this really got to me for a few reasons. First off, you're a 16-year-old kid. You are still in high school, if not a high school dropout. You have no skills or experience. Like most 16-year-olds, you are qualified for an entry-level position and nothing more. You are also not entitled to a job, as in almost every jurisdiction, having a job is a privilege. Second, when you get a job, I don't care what company you work for, most new hires start at the bottom and have to work their way up. Now, contrary to how some of the self-centered people and the narcissistic people think, there are real reasons for this. See, most new hires don't have the skills or experience to be placed in a position of authority. You know, the young workers know all of the rules, yet experienced workers know the rules, exceptions, workarounds, loopholes, goals, and everything else that can give them the ability to do their jobs well. Working your way up the corporate ladder will involve a lot of work, take a lot of time, and more often than not, it won't go your way. And as I said before, what the company needs will always take priority of what you need. For example, I wanted to use some of my vacation to take the first week of July off this year. But because my company needed me on duty that week, I wasn't able to take my week off. Was I mad? Yes, but it is what it is. See, we have a large and growing number of people who believe that when they come into the workforce, all of the older veterans should move out of their way so that they can take over. Again, nobody has to move for you. When it comes to promotion, like everything else, what's best for the company is more important than the individual ambition of employees. Guess what, kiddos? In the real world, you play the same game in the same system as everyone else. Sometimes you win, more often than not you lose, and the smart ones understand this, but these self-righteous and arrogant kids don't. If you want to move up in the corporate world, get used to being passed over, get used to being disappointed, and prepare to spend a lot of time feeling as though you're overlooked. The road to success is long and difficult. Not everyone is made to be at the top. Some people are meant to be where they are. I am able to accept this. Most people are not. And we also have a large and growing number of people who think they're owed more than the rest of us, and boy, oh boy, does that get tiring. And I'm not even talking about customers. I'm talking about just people in general. Because some kids have literally been told their whole lives that they're special, that the rules don't apply to them, and some have even been told they're too important to do certain jobs. Guess what? You're never too important to flip burgers. You're never too important to work a minimum wage job. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you grew up. Everybody is the same. And some people, if you think you're too important to scrub toilets, guess what? You're probably going to be scrubbing toilets. You're too important to flip burgers, you'll probably end up flipping burgers. That's just how it is. See, when you tell kids lies, eventually the kids will believe them. And we should just be telling kids the flat out truth. You're not going to be successful straight out of college. You're not going to be handed promotions one after the other. You're going to have to play the same set of rules in the same system. Does the truth hurt? Yeah. The truth is the truth, though. And this whole attitude, I can tell you right now, from hearing it from coworkers, gets really tiring after a while. So when it comes to this whole week of havoc, we get to the main event of this shit show. Now, like most people, I have a personal Facebook account, and most times I don't post anything truly serious. There's a lot of negativity in this world, and I don't take myself too seriously on either Facebook or Instagram. This last week I did, and this is where the problems began. Now, I'm going to be vague intentionally here, but given recent events, I decided to post something about said recent event. I'm not going to say anything more about the events or what they entitle. You can figure it out on your own. So this is where two of my Facebook friends used one of my posts to get into a discussion. One is a guy that I've known since before kindergarten, and he will be named Rash for the purposes of this story. The other is a woman that I've known since middle school, and she will be named Reasonable. I should point out that both these two went to middle school together for some time, so they should know each other personally. So, when I posted my post on the current event, Mr. Rash took it upon himself to call me out and questioned my reasoning for posting it. Now, normally when I get something like this, it's an attacking type of post. I do everybody a favor and ignore it. I learned a long time ago, getting into an argument with an idiot or a crazy person will never end well. Let them be crazy, let them be the idiots. Don't get into an argument. It's not worth it. So, after some more negativity on Facebook, I said, you know what, I need to take a few days off Facebook. I have too much negativity and I need some time off. Fair enough. A lot of people do take social media breaks because of all the negativity. Well, in my absence, shit really went down. While I was away, for the 2 days that I was away, Reasonable saw my post and came to my defense, and Reasonable made, well, reasonable and rational arguments. Now, in response to this, Rash proceeds to what can only be described as attack her in terms of why she's on this side, why she's taking up for me, blah, blah, blah. And theoretically, they should be on the same side. That should be noted. But Reasonable makes some arguments in response to one of Rash's comments and asks a couple of questions of Rash. Rash, in turn, just attacks her even more in response to these questions. And it got to the point that she was obviously beyond hurt and had to ask Rash not once but twice to leave her alone and stop responding to her. Now, I have no problem with political disagreement, but the way Rash acted was just inappropriate. To have someone ask you to leave them alone and then attack you to the point where they have to tell you to leave them alone twice is unacceptable. So I logged back into Facebook 2 days after all of this took place, and I suddenly realized what's going on, so now I gotta be the fucking referee here. I hate being the voice of reason. I've said that before. So I apologized to Reasonable, since I felt bad that she got attacked while sticking up for me, because I really do. I really do feel bad that she was treated the way she was, sticking up for me. Now, to her credit, Reasonable, being, well, Reasonable, had no problem with me and was upset at Rash. So I in turn DM Rash, and I've made it as clear as I can be made using the English language that if this situation ever repeats itself on any one of my page or posts, I will block him. If he can attack whoever he wants to on his own pages. If he ever attacks me or my friends on one of my posts again, we're done. I'd hate to see him go, but life goes on. I mean, as long as I've known him, I would hate to do this, but the way he acted was completely out of line. And I had to fucking clean up this mess, which I don't want to do, and I don't necessarily think I should do, because you have a grown adult male basically cursing out another grown adult over something so silly as a political disagreement. I believe we can all let's just all get along like grown adults. So, that was the whole week that prevented me from recording episode 92 when scheduled, and with that out of my system, I'm going to take another break and I'll talk about some F1 news stories next. Welcome back. We conclude with a few F1 stories. The first and most important one in my mind is that Andretti Formula Racing LLC, and I'm quoting, should progress to the next stage of the application process and commercial discussions with Formula One management. So basically, what that means is the FIA have approved Andretti Formula Racing to apply for a spot in Formula One. Now, I read the Rich Energy Haas F1 book, which I'm going to discuss during wheel reviews in December. More on that later. But based on what I've read in terms of the way both ownership and sponsorship have been handled, I think it's good that F1 is doing a better job at vetting owners. And again, I'll have more to say about this when I do the Rich Energy and F1, the Rich Energy Haas F1 book later this year. So now we have something that I'm actually kind of stunned actually has to be discussed, but we need to discuss the story from the F1 race at Qatar. The heat was a serious issue for drivers, teams, and fans alike. Nate Saunders, in his ESPN article, link in the description, did a very, very good write-up on the heat and all of its issues. I'm going to quote this. This is a direct quote from the article. I did change the Celsius to Fahrenheit, as I do live in the United States. Quote, watching the drivers come through the media pen after the event was remarkable. Some looked like they had been stuck in a sauna for several hours. Some were red-faced and dripping with sweat. One or two appeared to stagger in as if still low on energy. In the corner of the media pen reserved for the written media, there were two large pools of sweat on the floor where drivers arrived one by one to do interviews. In the cool-down room reserved for the top three drivers, McLaren rookie Oscar Piastri lay down on the floor. Newly crowned three-time world champion Max Verstappen sat against the wall and jokingly asked if anyone had a wheelchair. Esteban Ocon had vomited inside his helmet 15 laps into the race. Williams driver Logan Sargent retired from the race with 17 laps remaining, suffering dehydration after a week of having flu-like symptoms. Sargent's teammate Alex Albon actually visited the medical center for acute heat exposure. He was cleared and discharged afterwards. The air in Donna had been dry and oppressive all week. On the surface, the race temperatures of 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit might not seem extreme, but Esteban Ocon said it was just like 176 degrees inside the cockpit. But the mixture of conditions of the desert and the unique nature of the race made for a perfect storm. I don't know why F1 is so obsessed with the Middle East as they are, but this is just another instance of F1 putting profits against driver safety. F1 doesn't have the systems in place to keep drivers cool as well as hydrated while in their cars as some other series do. Now, it would be easy of me to say, well, they're race car drivers, they should be able to tough out certain things. In this situation where the risks of a race on the driver's physical needs are much more pronounced, I think would be the word, there should be a hydrating system. There should be something to prevent the drivers and keep the drivers cool. Obviously there isn't it, and I'm afraid that something's going to happen. We're going to have another fatality if something like this doesn't change. Now, from one awkward situation to another. Las Vegas Grand Prix is scheduled for November 18th. I can tell you this right now, from what I've been reading, most of the people in Las Vegas are happy that this is going to be over soon. But we have another issue that might not have been handled good for the way some people see it, but it is an issue. So, for decades, the area where the teams prepare the cars has been known as a paddock. For the Las Vegas Grand Prix, the term pit building will be used officially. Now, to understand this, you need to understand what happened during the 2007 Las Vegas shooting. On October 1st, 2017, a man named Stephen Paddock opened fire on the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip from his Las Vegas hotel suite. In this attack, 60 innocent people were killed and 867 people were injured. And amazingly enough, even after numerous interviews with family, friends, people who knew the guy, his motives from the shooting remain unknown because he left no evidence whatsoever of his motive, which has never been uncovered. Now, I understand how Formula One fans might see this as just pointless, but it's a horrific attack, and the horrific nature of the attack is why it had to be done. Now, I will give Formula One credit where credit is due, because they seem to take the advice that when it comes to America, this is our sandbox, and if you're going to play in it, you will accept our rules. They seem to be doing better at this. It's a necessary evil, but if it helps the Las Vegas Grand Prix go forward, it's a necessary evil, and it's still a bad situation, but it's a necessary evil. Now we get to former F1 chief Bernie Ecclestone. He is 92 years old, which is more proof that the good die young and douchebag pricks live forever. I bring him up because he was convicted in a British court for fraud. Now, according to the BBC, he had £400 million in a trust in Singapore but did not report it to British authorities in 2015. They will find this out, by the way, so even if you're as powerful as Bernie, you're still going to get caught. Now, his sentence was 17 months in prison, suspended for 2 years, and he's paying £653 million in back taxes and fines. Now, the article that I read, link in the description, from the BBC, has this gem of a line. Quote, "It was heard that Ecclestone was, quote, seeking to draw a line under investigations into his tax affairs, unquote, because he was, quote, fed up with paying huge bills for advice." Well, enjoy paying a really huge bill now. What an asshole. He is a man who has been accused of bribery, racism, anti-Semitism, and illegal possession of firearms, amongst other things. Does this type of behavior really shock you? He's like every billionaire. He's greedy and selfish, doesn't care about anyone but himself, and he'd made that clear from minute one. You wonder why Liberty Media kicked his ass out the door when the takeover was finished? They saw him for what he was. They saw him for the train wreck that he was. And I promise you that he's going to have to pay this. And I have a feeling that there may be more coming out about him. But I'll get to that when it happens. I'm glad this asshole is £653 million poorer. And I also hope the Grim Reaper will visit him very soon. Now, I wanted to discuss AEW this week. I'm actually waiting for something to play out. So we'll discuss AEW, at least for part of the podcast, if not all of it, next week. I'm Dave Fossley. If you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week for episode 93.